Hi guys, I am Dennis from Respect Studios, and in this tutorial we'll be making ScrollRect UI which snaps to the button's position. So I've been trying to do that in some time, and then I did it with pretty small amount of code. It's like 50 or 60 lines of code, and it's fun. So the idea is you have a couple of buttons. We'll be doing only for horizontal layout, horizontal layout, and the buttons will snap in the middle of the screen. But I will show you the one way where you can move them to somewhere else, so you can snap them to the upper right corner or lower right corner. So let's get started. At first, what we need is a panel, not 3D panel, UI panel. Okay, let me go to 2D mode, and let me disable the background. Okay, let's select the canvas and set the render mode to screen space camera, not screen space camera, screen space overlay. No, don't touch that. Sorry. Let's select the canvas and set that to scale with screen size. Let's set it to 1024 and 768. Let's put the match to 0.5. So now we can have the canvas to be scaling with the size of the screen. Here we'll set 1024 by 768, and I'm going to change my layout to arrangement layout, so I can have the UI to full screen, which is better for the UI. It will be scaled up with the size of the screen. Now this panel is just the panel that we're going to put everything inside, so we'll leave the name as panel, that we don't need anything else. We're going to make one more panel, which will be scroll panel. That panel, we have to apply ScrollRect to it. Actually we don't, we have to apply it to the upper panel. We're going to scroll that panel, so on the upper panel, which is the first panel, we're going to apply ScrollRect. We're going to disable vertical, and we'll select the scroll panel and put it in the content. Now the scroll panel, just for fun, we are going to set its anchor to be at the center. We'll set its width to 300 and its height to like 650. Okay, 650. If we play, we can see now we can move that scroll panel, and when it's default pose, it should be at 0. This is very important because we'll be using that position to move and snap to the buttons. Now under the scroll panel, let's create buttons. I'm going to create one button. Its anchor will be at the center. The button width will be 275 and the height will be 500. Fair enough. Let's select the text and zoom it like bigger. Button, yeah, let's leave the text at button, so we don't need anything else. We'll select the scroll panel and we will turn its alpha to 0 so we don't see it, so we can see only the buttons. Now the buttons, I'm going to make them, let's name that button 1. Let's save the scene actually, because I haven't done that. ScrollRect scenes, let's call it main. Okay, let's select that button 1, duplicate it and move it 300 units away. Let's duplicate it one more time, 600 units, duplicate it again, 900, and one more time 1200. So if I select now this, you can see I can't go very far away, which is because the panel which have the scroll rect is set to restricted, is set to elastic. We want it to be unrestricted because we want to be able to move away from the actual panel's restrictions. Because if we set it to elastic, we'll be able to move only within the range of the panel. So if I select it and leave it to elastic, if I select that panel and make it bigger like this, I'll be able to move as much as here, not more. So I'm going to make it smaller, 300 width, and I will leave that to unrestricted. We will leave the inertia, we can leave it there. And okay, we have all the buttons. It's very important that the buttons anchor are at the center of their scroll parent panel. So every button's anchor should be at the center, not at the left, at the center. Save. We are going to make one more object, which is going to be a child of the panel, not scroll panel, but the panel. Create empty object and name it center to compare. This will be the center object that we can make it 50 by 50. It should be pretty small. We don't need anything else, we just need the rect transform. We are going to use that object to compare each button's center position and see which button is the closest to that object, and then we're going to move the scroll panel to just the snap to that button. Let's make one empty game object and name it game controller. Let's go to the scripts, create C# ScrollRect snap C#. Now, okay, select that script and place it over the game controller. Double click to open it, and let's write the script. I'm going to make that bigger so you can see it better. First, we need public rect transform, which will be called panel. This will be holding the panel that will be moving it. Hold the panel, actually what, to hold the scroll panel. Okay, then we need public, oops, we can't do that because we have to using Unity engine.ui to be able to call for UI elements. Public button, we're going to call that button, but it will be array. This will be holding all of the buttons. We will have to assign them manually. You can do that by script, but I'm just saving resources from the calculations. And then we need public rect transform. This will be our center. The center is center to compare the distance for each button. Let me just public variables, private variables. Now, for private variables, we need private float, which will be array. Distance, this will be holding all buttons distance to the center. Okay, every button will have distance to the center, and this float will be holding every button's distance to the center from the current position. Then we need private boolean, which will be called dragging. It will be equal to false, will be true while we drag the panel. So while because if I don't make that, I'm going to show you after that, but while we drag, the UI will be trying to snap the buttons while we are dragging, and we'll have these popping. The UI will pop all the time. So when we drag, we will disable the snapping. So when we release the mouse, it will enable the dragging, it will enable the snapping, and it will snap only when we don't drag. Okay, let's make one more private integer button distance. This will be holding the distance between the buttons, and private min button num. This will be I don't know how to explain this. I'm going to show it later. This will hold. We're going to loop through our buttons, and we're going to compare all of the distances to see which distance is the smallest one. And when we get the smallest distance, this variable will hold. It has to be integer. This distance will hold the number of the buttons. To hold the number of the button with smallest distance to center. Okay, I think that's okay. Void start. In the start function, we're going to say button length is going to be equal to button dot length. We're going to take the length of the buttons, and then we'll say distance will be equal to new float button length. This way we're going to at the start we're going to declare the length of the distance array, so it don't have to be dynamically declared, because it's more costly. So here we're going to say that the distance array will have the same length as the buttons array. Now get distance between buttons. This will be button distance. Button distance will be equal to, and we want that to be integer, math f that absolute, we want the absolute value, and we'll say button 1 that get component rect transform that anchored position that x. So we're going to get the button 1, which will be this one, rect transform anchored position x, which is 300, minus button 0, not button length, button 0 that get component rect transform that anchored position that x. So here we get button 1, which is at 300, and button 0, which is at 0, and we're going to get 300 for button distance. Let me save and see if that's going to work. We don't have any errors. Yeah, just to be sure that we have what we need, I'm going to print button distance and play the scene. It should be index out of array. Okay, first of all we have to assign our buttons. So select the game controller and select the game controller and place our buttons in the button array. So we have them for button 5. Center, we need the center to compare the object that we created, which is at the center. Place it on the center. Panel, we need the scroll panel, place it on the panel. Save. Now when we play, we're going to get 300. This is the distance between the buttons. Our buttons have the same distance, that's why we only check button 1 and button 0. Let me remove the printing. That's all for the start function. Now we are going into the update void update where most of the magic will happen. Let me have some lines here. Okay. For we're going to loop through our buttons and see which button have the smallest distance to the center. But first we're going to loop through our buttons. For integer I equals 0, I is less than button dot length I plus plus. So for each distance I, remember that we set the distance array to be the same as the buttons array, so we're not going to get any errors here. So distance I, and we're not going to dynamically extend the array, it's already set as the same size as the buttons array. Distance I will be equal to mathf.abs, we want to get the absolute value, center.transform.position.x minus button 1, button not 1 but I, because we want to loop through our buttons and get their distances, button I that transform that position.x. So now we're going to get all the distances between every button and the center. So if we go in Unity and get rid of the errors, cannot be applied, because why? Because we are using wrong. Okay, if we select the game controller and go to debug mode, when we play we're going to see distance, which is set size to 5, and we're going to say element 0, which is button 0, its distance to the center is 0. Button 1, distance to the center is 300. If we start moving, you can see that all of the distances are changing. So when we go to the last button, which is approximately here, button 0 is 1200. This is the distance from button 0 to the center. Okay,